Most creators think that if they had more gear, more time, or more money, that they would become more creative. But in reality, those things that we complain about every day, those limitations are the reasons we grow. I'm Bo from 2060 Media, and I'm going to be showing you 4 different constraints in my life that helped me become a better filmmaker. Before we get started, I just want to say, your limits are not your enemy. They're the reason your creativity exists. The biggest constraint that I face every day is the amount of space that I have in my studio. It is a guest bedroom that we have in our house that has a queen-size bed in it, as well as my workspace and my desk, and this also ends up kind of being a catch-all for some of our stuff that we're working on around the house. So right now we're gearing up for the Christmas season, so the bed's got a bunch of wrapping paper on it, and we've got boxes with gifts kind of scattered around the room. So I'm having to work in a small space, but it's also being used for a little bit of storage. This caused me to start thinking about angles and depth and different ways that I can use that small space to my advantage. If I didn't have this small space for me to film in, I wouldn't have ever really learned about trying to film in a small space, and I wouldn't have learned how to use what I've got to be able to form the perfect video. For a while, I had started using the corners of the room, but those were also kind of taken up with some side tables, our dog's kennel, as well as my desk that goes corner to corner from one wall. So I started using the width of the room. I said it in my last video, but this behind me is actually a barn door that leads into our living room, and I realized once I closed it and used that space in front of me, it was just the perfect amount of room for a key light and a camera. And honestly, that constraint has helped me learn so many different things about using depth, different camera lenses, and that's better than any studio space that I ever could have rented out or used. The next constraint that I'm going to talk about has actually become part of my identity. I don't have a whole lot of gear. I'm not running the biggest camera that I can get. I'm not running the most expensive lights or even the best audio solutions. But this constraint has taught me to use the gear that I have instead of just going and buying the next new thing. It has also forced me to learn my gear inside and out. Instead of just getting a camera that can just be set up and shot on, I had to start learning the insides of my camera, what it's capable of, and what it's not capable of, and I've been able to work around that. My A6600 that I'm filming on right now does shoot in S-Log, which is what I'm filming in right now. And that's also taught me how to embrace a new level of color grading. I color grade within DaVinci Resolve, which is a free tool that I use to edit all of my videos in. And without the constraint of my gear, I wouldn't have ever really learned about picture profiles, S-Log, LUTs, and even diving into learning what node trees are within DaVinci Resolve. The biggest point that I want to take away with this constraint is that your gear does not make you more creative. Mastering what you have does. The third constraint that I want to talk about is a little bit personal. This is not something that I'll label myself with all the time or even advertise to a lot of people, but I do have ADHD. And while running 2060 Media by myself, this does cause some constraints. I don't have an endless supply of energy, motivation, or focus on any given day. Here, time is the real constraint. And it's also made me become more efficient with my work. Because when time is limited, your priorities become more clear. You plan your A-roll more. You reread a script 3 or 4 times before finalizing what it wants to look like. You focus on the shots that matter, and you don't waste time on things that don't matter. This constraint has taught me structure. I love structure, but it's also something that I find very difficult to put together and to create. So one day I forced myself to do it. I know that I love the structure, I just have to get there. Every day I wake up and I do the same 5 things to start my day. I make myself a cup of coffee, I turn on my computer, I read my emails, I check my analytics, and I turn on a camera. And while I love structure and had difficulty creating it, I did realize that I needed that. In reality, these videos don't exist because I have all the time in the world. They exist because I don't. So in the end, You don't need more time, you need more intention. My fourth and final constraint is that I don't have a huge budget. I'm not running with a $5,000 camera or the best lights that I can buy. I'm working with what I've got. And that financial constraint has been the biggest teacher of them all. I'm learning to use DaVinci Resolve so I can have a free software instead of stacking up subscriptions. I'm learning to buy used cameras instead of new to save some money on something that's just as good as buying it straight out of the box. I'm shooting with whatever light I have available, and I'm also repurposing old gear to be used in new ways. Money forces choices, and choices shape creativity. When you remove the "I'll just buy something better to fix it" mindset, it forces you into new levels of creativity that you wouldn't have had before. I realized I needed to start solving problems like an artist and not a consumer. And my key takeaway there is that your creativity grows when your budget doesn't. When I look back at my work today, I see how every improvement I made has come from a limitation that I didn't want anymore. My small room made me more intentional. My limited gear made me more skilled. The little amount of time that I had made me more focused. And my budget made me more resourceful. If you're a creator who is waiting for more time, more space, or more gear, stop waiting. Work within your constraints and just see how far you'll grow. If you liked what you saw in this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.